Here are some story times of reasons that I should have broken up with my ex, but I didn't. First of all, this guy was extremely talented. He had a beautiful singing voice. He played a bunch of instruments. And he would play me this song on guitar all the time that he told me he had written about his ex. And there was this whole backstory to the song, how he walked past an ice cream shop and saw her through the window waiting in line to get ice cream with this guy, and she was in his arms. And that moment is what prompted him to write this entire song about her. And I was never upset that the song was about his ex. I thought it was so beautiful and so many people could relate to it. So I was constantly pushing him to release this song. But every time I would go to him and be like, babe, I really think you should release this song. I don't care that it's about your ex. I really think it could be your big break. It's really good. He would come up with an excuse like, no, it's too personal. I don't really like it that much. I don't think I can release it. And so one night I made him play it for my best friend because I was like, you're never going to believe how beautiful this song is, and he won't release it. She said, isn't this Happier by Ed Sheeran? And I say, no, this song is about his ex. He wrote it. And he chimes in and says, no, this is definitely Happier by Ed Sheeran. I don't know why she thinks I wrote it. I never told her that. So not only did he feel comfortable lying to me and telling me that he wrote a song that was actually written by Ed Sheeran, but he also had the fucking audacity to make me look fucking crazy in front of my friend. And this is not the only time he did this either. One time he was rapping Crazy Story by King Von, and I was like, oh, what song is that? That's really catchy. And again, he said, oh, I wrote it. It's actually about da-da-da-da-da, and told me this crazy backstory that he had written the song about. And then when I found out that he didn't actually write that song and I tried to call him out for it, he again tried to tell me that I was crazy and that it was a joke that I took too seriously. That was actually his favorite line when I caught him lying about something was, oh, babe, that was just a joke. You just took it too seriously. I was with him for 2 birthdays and he didn't buy me a gift either time. The first time, it didn't really bother me that much because we weren't officially together yet and we were still too new for him to really know what to get me for my birthday. Then for my 21st birthday, when he didn't get me anything, it hurt my feelings because we had been together for almost a year and he got me nothing. Not a card, not a note, absolutely nothing. And when I confronted him about this, he said, well, babe, money's really tight right now. But he had spent $65 on Mary Jane literally 3 days before that. And I am not the type of person who needs some sort of extravagant gift for their birthday. I had actually been begging him time and time again to just write me notes because that meant a lot to me. Not even a note. First of all, he was living with me and my best friend for a while before we got our own place. And my best friend came to me at one point and said, hey, when does your boyfriend shower? She told me that she had never ever seen him use the shower in the entirety of the time that we had been living together. And at first I was confused, but then I thought about it and I realized I don't know that I've ever seen him take a shower while we've been living together either. So then I had to go and ask my boyfriend when he bathed. Wild concept, by the way, to have to ask your significant other when they bathe themselves because you never see it happen. He told me that he had a fear of people walking in on him while he was showering, so he did it in the middle of the night when there was less of a chance of people walking in on him. So I never really questioned it after that because he never stunk, so I was like, okay, I guess he's just showering in the middle of the night like he says he is. Fast forward to us living together in our own place without roommates, and our tub drain gets clogged. So every time you would shower, the water would get backed up all the way to your shins, and it was really gross. Drano wasn't helping, and to be fair, I was being lazy and not dealing with the problem because I was working 3 days a week at the hospital, 12-hour shifts, and I was just too exhausted all of the time to worry about it. Of course, he wasn't trying to help me find a solution to this problem, so I was like, you know what, I'll get to it when I get to it. But then I realized that the towels were only moving if I showered, and none of his soap, none of his shower stuff was moving for months. So once again, we are in the predicament of me having to ask my significant other if he's bathing. At first he was really pissed off and defensive that I was even asking him if he was bathing, but once I hit him with, I know that you're not using your soap and the towels aren't moving, so I know for a fact that you're not bathing, he admitted to me that he had only been washing his hair over the side of the tub and then washing his junk in the sink at his job. And let me repeat that just so we're on the same page. He told me he was only washing his hair in our home and then going to his job at a fucking gas station and washing his junk in the sink at the gas station. What I can only assume was gas station hand soap because his body soap sure as hell wasn't moving. And as if all of that wasn't enough already, he got pew-pews pulled on us 2 different times in our relationship. I'm going to talk about how he got pew-pews pulled on us 2 different times throughout our relationship. The first time this happened, it actually wasn't too crazy on my ex's part, if you can believe it. We were at a gas station. He was inside of the gas station. I was outside pumping gas into my car. While he was inside, some other dude catcalled me. So when he got back out to the car, I was like, oh my gosh, that gross dude over there just catcalled me while you were in there. And I was begging him not to get out of the car and confront this dude. And I even started to drive away from the gas station. My ex got out of my moving car to go yell at this dude and confront him. He got back into the car very quickly and very frantically and told me to drive away because the other dude had pulled a pew-pew on us. So obviously the guy who catcalled me and pulled the pew-pew on us was not right in the head. This still would not have happened if he just would have stayed in the fucking car like I told him to. The next time it happened, it was not just us in the car. His brother and his brother's girlfriend were also in the car with us. We had just gone out to eat and we were pulling out of the parking lot of the place that we had just eaten at. And this is really important. My ex was driving the car. I was in the passenger seat. His brother was directly behind him. And then his brother's girlfriend was directly behind me. There was a guy behind us when we were pulling out of the parking lot, and I think he honked at us for taking too long to turn. So when we both turned onto the same street, my ex drove up next to him, was honking the car and yelling profanities at him. My ex's brother then joined in with him and rolled down his window and was also yelling profanities at this dude. So this dude rolled down his window and pulled out a pew-pew and was pointing it over his wife directly at my ex and I in the front seats of the car. And all the while, this man is literally holding a pew-pew at us. My ex and his brother were yelling at him, oh, you're not gonna do shit, you're not gonna use it. For most of the time that this was happening, the cars were not stopped. Like, this man was driving next to us, pointing the pew-pew out the window at us. And of course, instead of driving away from him, my ex continued to drive right next to him and egg him on with his brother. And it actually ended up being the dude's wife who got him to put it away and drive away from us. And then my ex and his brother were so confused as to why me and his girlfriend were so upset about the situation that they just put us in. Both my ex and his brother grew up in a really rough area, and they said because of this, they had a really good read on whether someone would actually use their pew-pew or not, and both of them genuinely thought that they had done nothing wrong that night. But yeah, sorry this was 3 videos long. Let me know if you liked them, because believe it or not, I have a lot more story times, not just from this relationship, but also the situationship I was in after this relationship ended. Before I get into this story, I feel like it's really important to note that neither of us were okay with the other person having, like, old hookups in their phone. Like, if you hooked up with this person in the past, it should be left in the past, right? It's also important to note that we were friends before we officially started dating, and during this friendship, he told me that he had had schmexual relations with a girl that he worked with. We'll call her Alex, right? And when I say they hooked up, like, they did it on shift, apparently, at their job, like, in the bathroom. He worked with 2 different girls named Alex. One of them was straight and one of them was gay. And the reason why he called me during our friendship to brag to me about this hookup that he had was because he slept with the gay Alex. Fast forward to us actually dating. He's working a different job, but Alex keeps popping up in his phone on Snapchat. And every single time she popped up on his phone, I would be like, hey, is this the girl that you did things with in the bathroom at your old job? And he would say, oh, no, this is the gay Alex. You're thinking of the straight Alex. And I would say, no, actually, you told me you did things with gay Alex. In fact, that's why you were bragging to me about it so much. And he would say, no, babe, that was probably just a joke. Like, you took that too seriously. I was probably just joking. And we had this same back and forth several times for months. Like, I kid you not, it wasn't until 9 months into our relationship that he finally admitted that he had slept with this girl and that she was still in his phone. So I, rightfully so, freaked the fuck out on him because he had been lying to me for 9 months about something that I think is pretty serious. Like, just to put this into perspective for you, the only guy that I had ever hooked up with outside of a relationship followed my ex in the middle of the night one night on Instagram. He woke me up in the middle of the night, freaked out on me, and told me that that must mean that I was cheating on him. You can keep a girl that you hooked up with in your phone for months and lie to me about it? Like, how the fuck does that make sense? And then just another quick bonus story for this video. There was another girl while we were friends that he said he had met on Bumble and hooked up with, but after they hooked up once, they decided they would be better as friends, right? Not even a week into us officially dating, he invited her to come hang out with us without talking to me about it first, and then wondered why that made me uncomfortable. So in his mind, it was okay to bring a girl from his past to come hang out with us, but a dude from my past that I wasn't even talking to anymore, was not in contact with, followed him on Instagram, and somehow that means that I'm cheating. I went to my ex's mom's house one night to talk to her and tell her, hey, I've been trying to get your son into therapy for months and he won't go, and I need you to convince him to go or I am going to leave him. I said he lies to me, he gaslights me, he screams at me during arguments, and if I try to leave during an argument, like if I try to leave the house, he will pick me up, throw me on the closest piece of furniture, whether it's the couch or the bed, and he will take my phone and my keys away from me and basically hold me hostage in our home. And I let her know the last time that he had done this, I got out of the house before he was able to take my keys or my phone away from me. So he ran after me and proceeded to stand in front of me and block me with his body. So every step that I took towards my car, I had to physically push him out of the way with all of my might while he was screaming at me, mind you. She unfortunately did not seem too shocked by me mentioning this behavior of his to her, but she did tell me, you need to tell him the next time that happens, you're gonna call the cops on him, and you need to stick with it. If it does happen again, you need to call the cops on him. She then proceeded to tell me, he's my son, I love him, and I'm glad that you want to stick with him while he gets help, but you need to make sure that you have a way out. Never ever put yourself in a situation where you are dependent on him. She was basically just telling me not to be financially dependent on him, and I was like, oh, don't worry, he's unemployed half of the time, which means that I have to pay for our rent, and for our groceries, and for my car, and for his car, and basically everything that we own, so I'm not the one who's financially dependent on anyone. And we left that conversation with her being like, good, I'm glad that you have a way out. If you need it, I'll get him into therapy, but if the situation becomes unsafe for you, you need to leave. So she did what she said she was gonna do. She got him into therapy, and then he came to me, not knowing that I'd ever went and had this conversation with her, and told me that he had gotten himself into therapy and wanted me to be proud of him for it. He then only went to that therapist 2 times and just stopped going altogether, so obviously it didn't help anything. My ex was unemployed a lot. Like, we were only together for about a year and 9 months, and he had 7 or 8 different jobs within the period of us being together because he would just quit jobs or get fired from jobs before he had another one lined up. So I was the breadwinner for our entire relationship, right? I was the one with the stable income, so I was the one who was paying for rent and for groceries and for my car and for his car when he had one. And that's stressful enough as it is to constantly be the only person in your relationship with an income. But even when he had an income and he had money to spend, he wouldn't help me. One time after being employed for like a month and a half, he got a really good paying job, and when that first paycheck came in for that job, instead of helping me out with our finances, he bought a new pair of shoes. Not to mention, anytime he had money, he would spend his money on Mary Jane, and when he didn't have money, he would spend my money on Mary Jane. During one of the periods of time in our relationship where he was unemployed, I went to a friend's house to catch up and drink wine, and he brought a friend over to our place, and it's important to say that the friend was also unemployed. They were utilizing the Mary Jane that, of course, I had paid for because my ex had no money at the time, and neither did his friend because he had no money at the time. But I didn't really care. I was just at my friend's house blowing off some steam and just like relaxing finally for one night. I wasn't on my phone much that night, so I didn't see his text asking if him and his friend could use my card to DoorDash food. So by the time I had gotten back on my phone, I had not only that text, but another text from him saying, since you're not responding, I'm just going to take that as a yes. And a notification from my card that they had spent $42 on DoorDash. And as if that isn't already enough, my ex made a plan with this same unemployed friend that they were going to go DoorDashing together and they were going to use my ex's car. And at the end of every day that they DoorDash, they were going to split the money, right? And this was near the end of 2019 to early 2020, and anyone who DoorDashed during that period of time knows that the pay was shit. It's probably still shit, I just wouldn't know because I haven't DoorDashed in a while. So by the time my ex had DoorDashed for the day and split the money with his friend, he was just making back the money that he would have spent in gas for the day driving around. And no matter how many times I explained this to him, he still somehow thought that this was a better use of his time than applying to jobs. So something that I don't think I've mentioned in any of these other story times is that my ex and I were engaged. And before people bombard me in my comments asking me how I could possibly be engaged to this man, I was young and I was stupid and I thought that I was in love, okay? It wasn't a secret that he wanted to propose to me. I knew for several months that he wanted to propose, but I also knew that we were broke. So whatever ring he was gonna get me was gonna be a cheaper ring, right? He started asking me to send him rings that I liked, so I started looking on Etsy for rings that I liked and were definitely in our budget that I knew he could afford, and I was sending those to him. I made it clear several times that I really did not care about the price of the ring that he got me. The rings that I was sending him were around the $50 to $200 price range because that was all we could afford at the time, and even that seemed like too much. So when he did finally propose to me, it was a real surprise to hear him telling everybody that this ring cost upwards of $1,000. And he was not only saying that the ring was super expensive, but that he got it on the same website where Offset got Cardi B's engagement ring. And I knew right away that what he was saying about this ring wasn't true, but we were around our families right after he proposed, so I thought maybe he was just lying to them because he was embarrassed about the real price of the ring. When we got home, I was like, okay, so that was just for them, right? Like, you didn't actually spend that much money on this ring. And he stuck with the story that he told our families about the ring. And then I realized that the ring looked familiar, and it's because it was a ring that I had sent him from Etsy. It was specifically this ring from Etsy that you can see is $55. So I go to him and I ask him, why are you lying to me about this? You know that I never ever cared about the price of the ring. I sent you this ring because I knew it was in our budget and I think that it's beautiful. And I even told him, if you want to tell our friends and family that this ring costs more than it did, that's totally fine. I'll back you up 100%. But you don't lie to me about this. I'm your fiance. You're not supposed to lie to me about things like this. And even after all of that, he still stuck with his story and said that when you tried to buy the ring off of Etsy, it would take you to a completely different website, and that's where you had to buy it, and it was much more expensive there. Like, I couldn't just go to the same Etsy ad that I sent him in our messages. Also, I've bought a million things from Etsy. Like, who are you trying to fool right now? Oh, and another thing, we went to his parents' house first after we got engaged, and his father asked if he had asked my father for my hand. He made this whole big show of it and said that if my ex hadn't asked my father for my hand, then there was no reason to even propose to me because it didn't even count if he didn't have my father's permission. And before I could speak up and say anything, my ex goes, oh yeah, of course I asked him, of course I did. And I looked at him absolutely fucking dumbfounded because my father doesn't believe in that kind of thing, and neither do I. So I told him when he was planning to propose to me that he didn't have to do that, and I didn't want him to do that. So when we got home, another thing I asked him was, okay, so you just told your dad that you asked my dad for my hand because that would make him happy, right? And he proceeded to tell me that he did ask my father for my hand. Like, I couldn't just go ask my own father if that happened, which, by the way, it didn't. He lied about that. He definitely did not ask my father for his permission to marry me. So when I went to my ex and said, hey, I talked to my dad, he said that never happened. You never asked for my hand in marriage. He proceeded to tell me that my father must not remember that conversation. You're telling me my father didn't remember you asking for my hand in marriage? It's not about the fact that you spent $55 on my ring, because again, I don't care. It's not about the fact that you didn't ask my father for my hand, because again, I don't care. It's about the fact that you lied to me about it, and then when I found out what the truth was, you continued to lie to me about it like the truth wasn't literally in front of my fucking face. We were headed to one of our friends' birthday parties, and we had to stop at my parents' house on the way there. It's important to note that my parents have lived in the exact same house my entire life. It's where I grew up. It's on the edge of a tiny little cul-de-sac, and most of the people who live in the cul-de-sac have also been there for pretty much my entire life. So I grew up with these people, and they all feel like family to me. It's also important to note that my ex drove like a bat out of hell all the time. And when we left my parents' house that day, it was no different. He fucking ripped through that cul-de-sac fast as a motherfucker. And one of my parents' neighbors, Sarah, was standing outside with her children, And as our car passed her, she was flipping us off and yelling obscenities at us, right? I was horrified and confused because I love Sarah. I think she is such an amazing woman. I have always looked up to her. So to see her flipping us off and yelling obscenities at us, I mean, like, I was mortified. And while I'm sitting there trying to rack my brain around what just happened, my ex is saying all this shit like, oh, I should go back there and cuss that bitch out. How dare she flip us off like that? Like, she doesn't even know who the fuck she's messing with. And I didn't even know what to say. I was just so confused. So I texted my dad and said, hey, Sarah just flipped me and blank off. Like, do you know why she did that? I have no idea what's going on. My dad explained to me that she had no idea that it was us in the car, but that she was flipping us off because of how fast my ex was going, and that was an issue that they had had with my ex for a while, how fast he was driving through the cul-de-sac when there are kids that live there and kids play outside all of the time. My dad would truly tell us every time we left to make sure that we were taking it slow through the cul-de-sac and watching out for the kids. So it wasn't like this was just an ongoing issue that he wasn't telling us about. He just wasn't being confrontational about it. So I explained to my ex that she didn't realize it was us and she flipped us off because we were going way too fast through the cul-de-sac. He, of course, gets super defensive about this and says that he wasn't going fast at all and that she's just a bitch. And at this point, I'm in the passenger seat, like, almost in tears. I was so upset over what had happened, right? We pulled up to a stoplight and he asked what was going on with me because I was being so quiet and practically, like, curling into myself. And I can hardly speak because I am trying to fight back tears, so very quietly, very cowardly, I say, I'm just really upset because I think Sarah is mad at us because you did drive too fast through the cul-de-sac. And this dude lost his fucking mind on me. He started saying, it's always me. I'm always the fucking villain. I'm always the fucking bad guy. You could never think for even 1 fucking second that this bitch did anything wrong because it's always me. You just want to make me the fucking bad guy. I am still trying to hold back tears while I tell him that's not true. It's just I do think you were driving too fast today and that's why she was upset with us. He then says, you know what, I'm just gonna drop you off at home since you love being fucking annoying. And I said, excuse me? And he said, God, you ruined fucking everything! I basically told him that if he dropped me off at home, I was gonna be honest with our friends about why I wasn't there. He shut up, we went to our friend's birthday party and acted like nothing happened.
After watching Leave the World Behind yesterday for a second time, I found 5 pages of hidden messages, symbols, hints, or clues. 5 pages. I've now done 2 videos, go check them out. One explains the Antichrist, the ship, the White Lion, making his appearance prior to the apocalypse. Shirt basically mocking us because the sister's wearing the NASA shirt right next to him. NASA, the biggest hoax in all of our history. And my last video, you gotta go check it out because I'll drop bombs. I mean, I'm talking lots and lots of hidden things that I discovered. But in this video, I want to explain the end. I want to talk about Rose, because although the young character did not get as much screen time as any of the others, she, in my opinion, is the pivotal character in all of this. In the movie, Rose is obsessed with Friends, and due to the lack of internet, loss of cell service, she is left desperate to find out the ending of Friends, as she did not get to see the finale. And this is literally all she is focused on during the entire movie. Even as the apocalypse is happening all around her, in the back of her mind, all she cares about is what happened to the ending of Friends. But this, my friends, is a metaphor. Just like everything in this movie. So let's start this with a bone-chilling metaphor. Something that was shown in this movie a few times. Rose's iPad stuck at the very ending of Friends. But there is a very deep, deep message right here that I think a lot of people are missing. You're offline. Check connection. Check connection. Now I know I'm not the only Gen Xer that thought to myself, boy, this had to have been very uncomfortable for Julia Roberts to have to do this in the movie. Why is that, Auntie? For her young daughter character to be obsessed with Friends? Awkward. Why? Oh, you don't know? Okay, well, most of us Gen Xers remember clearly, vividly. And I remember thinking, when it happened? You see, Matthew Perry and Julia Roberts used to be an item. They used to date. Well, now that sounds like a connection right there. But did you know there's another connection? What are the odds that your ex-boyfriend would die on your birthday? Slim. Almost none, right? Not in this case. Matthew Perry died on October 28th of 2023. The same day as Julia Roberts celebrated her birthday. That's suspicious, but not as suspicious as the way Matthew died. I'm just going to leave that right there. Like that. Connection officially checked. Rose asked her dad in the car on the drive over to the house, when we get back to the city, can you take me to the coffee shop from Friends? Where he explains to her, honey, I don't think that's a real place. I don't think that's real at all. Now, as a Gen Xer, this really struck me as odd. Rose was disheveled. She was so upset. And any parent who could do anything in their power to help a child who is upset, they will do it. So the fact that Rose talked to her mom, asked her mom so many times, I just want to know how it ends. You cannot tell me, especially since it's Julia Roberts, that Rose's mom and dad did not see the season finale, the whole finale of Friends, the last one, most likely when it originally aired, because we've all seen it. Yet Julia chose to not tell her daughter how it ended, even with the very real looming threat that we will never get internet back. You're never going to be able to get to see this. So why didn't she just tell her daughter how it ended? In my last video, I showed that in Julia Roberts' character's room, there was 2 books in the corner. One said witchcraft, and the one below it said a remarkable woman. The fact that none of these main characters, especially the adults, talk to or pray to Yeshua or Yahweh, God or Jesus at all, while they are knee-deep in the apocalypse, facing the very real looming threat of death, that seemed a little suspicious to me. And today, after noticing the witchcraft book in her room, it made me realize perhaps these characters were not Christians at all, which I already came to that conclusion yesterday after the Antichrist, the white lion, the ship that was beached, came on scene and they were still there. Because we all know before the Antichrist comes into the scene, all of the Christians will be raptured up. We won't be here to see the Antichrist at all. Meaning everyone in that movie was not raptured up, was not a Christian. In fact, only 2 characters mentioned or talked about any kind of God. Danny, the survivalist, he told the guys, well, pray to whoever it is that you need to. And Rose. And Rose told her mom that she heard about God on a TV show. I think it was West Wing, clearly pointing out that her mom and dad had never taught her about Jesus or God. She went on to explain this show and how a man was in a flood and he was waiting and praying. Radio station told him that the river was going to flood the town. He said, it's okay, I'm going to pray. A guy came by in a boat to save him. He said, nope, go ahead, I'm not getting in. God's got me. A helicopter even came, sent down a ladder, and he said, no, I'm okay, I'm praying, I'm good. God's got me. And he drowned. When he got to heaven, he was so upset. He told God, why would you do this? I pray to you every day. Why wouldn't you save me? And he said, I sent you a radio report. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. What more do you want? After Rose finished telling her mom this, her mom looked at her and said, Rose, what are you getting at? And she looked up at the ceiling and she said, I think I'm done waiting. What that meant was she was going to find Christ on her own, which is exactly what she did. The next morning, they woke up and Rose was nowhere to be found. She had broken into the neighbor's home next door, the Thorns. As the camera panned onto the Thorns' home, you could see that they had a red door. And if you know, then you know. And if not, that's what I'm here for. Here is the door, and here's the explanation. Dating back to biblical times, a red door was symbolic of protection against death. In Exodus 12, Israelites were said to have made a pact with God for the first Passover. They should sacrifice a lamb in order to receive protection for their household. In biblical time, Hebrew slaves were instructed to smear blood of lamb on the front doors to protect their firstborn from the angel of death. In Catholicism, churches painted the doors of the church red to represent blood of Jesus Christ. There is something far more symbolic in this picture as well. The thorns. Ooh, I almost started crying. This, I believe, is symbolic of the crown of thorns Yeshua, Jesus Christ, wore on the cross as the ultimate sacrifice for the world, dying for our sins and for the salvation of the world. Rose was done waiting. She was done waiting for her parents to teach her about Christ, and she decided to find him on her own. Rose found the bunker downstairs and a very large DVD collection, and you guessed it, of course, the last season of Friends. As Rose started to play that DVD, the camera panned to the name of the final episode, 3 words, the last one. If you know, then you know. If you don't, here I am. Matthew 20:16. So the last will be first, and the first will be last. The last one. When her father was explaining to her the coffee shop of Friends isn't real, I don't feel like he was really meaning the coffee shop at all. Perhaps the father didn't believe in Jesus. The one thing that Rose wanted to know, the one thing Rose was desperate to find out, was the truth about Jesus Christ. But neither of her parents, although we all know that they had seen the ending of Friends, they knew about it, chose not to tell her about it at all. I was sitting here thinking, what kind of a parent wouldn't just tell her how the show ends? That's horrible. When ironically, I thought to myself, what kind of a parent wouldn't tell their children the truth about Jesus Christ? So that is my take on the ending. Beautiful Rose found her salvation. She found her shelter. She found her safety, and she found everlasting life. Behind the blood of Jesus Christ, and because of those thorns on his crown, the crown that he wore on the cross when he died, for the sins of the world and our salvation. And little Rose, She was done waiting. She found it all on her own. Oh, I just heard her cry. Now, I don't know if that's what Obama wanted that to mean, but I'm telling you right now, that is exactly what it means to me. Sometimes you gotta stop waiting, and you gotta go out and find your salvation through Christ on your own. Amen.